Hi, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for stopping by. This week is the first video of 2022, so Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks for coming back to the channel. I really appreciate it. I'm going to do a shop tour. I've been asked to do one a few times and asked about a few different setups and things like that, and I really don't show a lot of my shop in my videos. Usually you just get an overhead of whatever I'm working on. And so my shop was in a bit of disarray, and it's still not 100%, but it's much better thanks to my son and my daughter-in-law, who asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said a couple days of time to help me do my shop organization, and they gave me lots of help, and they did a great job. So I'm just going to work counterclockwise around the shop here and show you some things, and hopefully you enjoy. Alright, so I've got two bays in my shop, and very seldom bring a vehicle in here. Once in a while if there's a need, but not often, because I don't like having that mess on the floor. We're in Canada, so all kinds, especially this time of year, all kinds of road salt and junk come in. Just a mechanic's toolbox here with wrenches and pliers and drill bits and screwdrivers and typical mechanical tools in there. So this was the start of where the fun hits here. This is a little 3/4 horsepower, and everything in the shop except for one bench grinder, which I seldom use, is General, Canadian made General or General International, back before they went out of business. So it's the good old stuff from the late 90s, early 2000s. Some of it I bought new, some of it I bought like new and used, which is great because I'm in New Brunswick, Canada, so this stuff was sold out of Quebec mostly, or that's where they made it, the Canadian made, and so there's lots of it around up there, and if you watch and you're patient, you can get the tool you want. It'll come up on Kijiji eventually. So start out with, I just got this not very long ago. Actually, I got it put together about 3 weeks ago, and I haven't used it yet, but I'm going to hook this up to these sanders temporarily or permanently. I'm not sure yet how I'm going to do it, but these things make a lot of dust, obviously, and it's a real nuisance to keep hooking them on, up and unhooking them. So I'm going to try and figure out a way to hook them up more permanently, and we'll probably show you that in another video coming up when I figure it out. So beside the dust collector is a floor model oscillating spindle sander, and then beside that is the it's got a 12-inch disc and a 6x48 belt. Both of those things I use, especially the combination disc belt sander. I use that a ton. I'm going to use the oscillating spindle sander in next week's video, and I'll give you a spoiler alert. I'm going to tell you what that is shortly and show it to you so you can see it a week ahead of time. So in behind those is my dust collection system. That's a 3 horsepower twin bag system, and it is permanently ducted into the shop. And I'll just back up here and show you the duct work. So it just goes up and across. There's a feed there that's just laying across the bags for now, which I use to vacuum up around my lathe. I've got a vacuum nozzle attachment for it, and I've got some new hose. Actually, that hose has been in here long enough, the black hose, that it's starting to actually wear through. So I've got a full roll of new hose out in the back part that I'm going to install here soon. And I'm going to make that longer so I can get a little bit longer reach with it. So the ductwork goes over, comes down, it ties into the machines that are in the center of the shop here, and the table saw. Then it comes across and ties into some more machinery over here. And we'll look at those machines as we go around the shop here. Okay, so right across from the oscillating spindle sander and that little dust collection system, this is a 6x89-inch horizontal belt sander, which I also use a lot, especially in cutting boards. But I got to level up the bottom. It actually looks like it's sitting a little bit uphill here. I've just moved some of these things around here. I'm trying to decide where their final resting place is going to be. So this, I use the dust collection system right there. I would unhook off the joiner and come across to this one. So I got to bounce those back and forth. Probably going to repipe that, but I don't want to pipe it straight across because I don't want to block this walkway off. There is Canadian General 8-inch joiner and a 15-inch General International planer. They were part of the original shop equipment. Those, the dust collector, the lathe, the table saw, and the bandsaw were all part of the original shop, and everything else I've added since. Here's just a little bit better look at the combination machine and the dust collector. So this is the bench that's beside my lathe. I got windows on this wall. never imagined having to need that wall space at the time, and I wanted the light. Well, now that I do videos, I don't want that light in here because it makes it really hard to film. It washes things out, and so I've covered them up. Anyway, this so for Christmas this year, I was fortunate to get a new Pro Edge system. And so lots of people ask how I sharpen my chisels. Well, this is new, and I've always told people I use a Wolverine. I'll show you the Wolverine jig that I use in a minute. But I do have this now, so I am going to start migrating some or most of my tools to this. There's a couple of grinds that I like that I can't do on this, and so I will I'll do that on the Wolverine. So I keep some of my chucks here on the table as well. A few faceplate type jigs and a few miscellaneous things, belts and whatnot on the bottom. And some sanding discs, and my face protection and my respiratory go there. Up on the wall there's my sheet sanding rack. I've got some tailstock point centers, and I've got some brad centers and things on the top, and some chuck jaws up there as well. And here's the spoiler alert for anybody doesn't want to know. Plug your ears and close your eyes. This carousel I'm making in next week's video. I was always laying these chisels across this table, and I spend more time hunting for chisels than I did turning some days. And so I made this a couple of days ago. My daughter-in-law affectionately calls it the chisel swivel, and so this will be the video coming up next Monday. So if you're interested in these things, come take a peek. So this is my General 260/20 VS lathe. I've had it again since the 90s. 20-inch swing. It's variable speed, reverse, 2 horsepower, 220. Fantastic machine. I love it. I don't. If people ask what speed you're turning at, you can tell. You see, I don't have a digital gauge, so I have to reference the little dial and see what number I'm on, and look at the door inside, and to give you that number. So that's why sometimes I don't recite numbers of RPMs. And lots of folks ask about my setup for filming. So you can see my lights are here. And here, so there's one here and there's one over here. And what I do when I film, of course I got the camera on the tripod here now. If you see this little stand that's sitting in behind the lathe right now with a couple of turnings on it, one turning and one that I got to turn shortly, that would normally be setting behind the lathe. My tripod would be on top of it leaning ahead, and those 2 orange straps that are hooked to the rack and behind would be hooked over top of the neck of the tripod, and it's just sort of cantilevered over top of the lathe there. In the background, you can see my stock of kiln dried bowl blanks. I think there's somewhere between 14 and 1500 blanks in there altogether. I've had these for many, many years, and I've turned hundreds of bowls out of them, but they're down to this many now. So I'm thinking it's probably going to do me out, but you never know. Also in this rack, I have a few burls stashed in here, and this is my rolling pin stock. So each one of those is laminated in 4 sections. So they're 3 1/4 inches thick by 6 inches wide and 3 feet long. So there's 4 rolling pins in each one. And this thing you see right here, this is green. My dad made this for me. This is an outboard tool rest attachment. So this handle will thread off, and I have faceplates which do thread onto that. So I can turn whatever I have the nerve to turn between the center of that and the floor for diameter, and I've never gone any bigger really than a couple of feet. So that is the outboard. Over here is the grinding system that I did use all exclusively until I got the Pro Edge. So this is my Wolverine jig, and I've got them slid back here now, but I use an 8-inch CBN wheel on my gouges and my skew chisels. And then I use the 6-inch with just a regular abrasive wheel on my scrapers. So that's how I typically am sharpening my chisels, how I was typically sharpening my chisels before now. So here I've got an oily waste container for my garbage. So anything that's got any mineral oil or Danish oil or denatured alcohol, anything like that. And all my waste goes in there. So it is safe. In the background behind that is one butternut tree, which I got this summer and cut down. I just brought it in here not that long ago. So I'm going to start processing that soon, I hope. There's a lot of work and there's a lot of blanks there, so, and some really big ones. There's some parts of that tree that are 26-inch diameter. So there's going to be some really, hopefully some really cool pieces come off of that. And then you can see here on the post, the dust collection system all on slides. I had them all open, so while we were sweeping up here, it's pulls the dust out of the air when you're sweeping. All right, so on this countertop, I keep my resin, both my cactus juice, my stabilizing resin, and my casting resin. So that goes over there. And above that is all the containers I use to mix, and some of them I use for molds. And then there's some glue and some other UV resin and different things like brass candle inserts and little odds and sods in the top, and a few books. There's the big shop sound system up there. Keep my circle, my sphere jig, and my steady rest up on the top, and my charging station for some of my cordless tools there. And underneath of that little framework you can see, that is my bowl press. That's my dad and my uncle made for me. And it's missing the bearing, which goes right on the end of the shaft right there. And that just threads down. So the bearing got broken, so we're gonna have to get that replaced. Then coming across here, up at the top, you see a few project things, some antler to turn some things out of. And the box here is just, that's what I use to measure volumes in my urns that I turn. Some sanding discs for the air sander and the air sander itself. And I keep my laser modules and my glasses for the laser and stuff up there. Some rice in those containers to measure my volume, and my Dremel tools are all up here. And then this is the shop computer, which is an essential now, strangely, for an old guy like me. So I've got my CNC, one of the CNC laser engravers here with the computer. And then in the corner, there are multiple pieces that are going to be made into something at some point. The center has a bunch of segments in it which need to be glued out. They're all laid out and need to be glued. And there's various odds and sods of there. Just cut off sort of some hybrids that I made that I hate to throw out because I may want to do something with them at some point. And then up top you see some of the overpour from some of the castings that I did, which I made I think I made a bell out of one here not that long ago. And then over here, of course, in the corner, I guess there's my vacuum chamber and the vacuum pumps in the corner. There's a little oven there that I dry some small things in, and my scales that I use to weigh resin. And another CNC engraver there. That's the one I just did the review on a couple of last week, I guess. And this shelf here has got brush on paint and then spray paint, and there's some pencil crayons left from a project, which will hopefully go to a new project soon. And then there's a bunch of different oils and finishes and a few other project things that you'll see coming up in the new year. And behind that there's some of my dyes and powders. So I've got my Red Creek Wood Designs mica powders are down here, and then up here is the Caster's Choice, which is the ones that I started on, which is why there's so many of them, and some aluminite dye on the top. And then there's a few projects that are kind of in various stages here. There's a cutting board that just needs to be finished, sanded and oiled, and then delivered to a customer when they're ready for it. And I got a cherry burl there that I'm drying out, and a couple pieces of sumac. And there's a bowl there that needs to have some more Danish oil put on it. So my scroll saw set up on top of the counter, and I'm just going to go underneath it here first and show you. I keep some of my burls are stashed underneath of my cabinets here, which is not ideal in some ways, but it just gets them out of the way. But this section has to be cleaned out because I can't get my feet under there to work on the scroll saw. I don't do a lot of scroll saw work anyway, but I want to, and that's something that other folks here in our house can try their hand at as well, which is the reason also that I bought this little pen lathe not that long ago. I've never used it yet, but I've got everything I need to make pens should I just choose to try, or anyone in the house wants to try. These boxes here are a new coring system. I bought the one-way easy core system. So there's the mounting base, which is the box on the far left, and then each one of those boxes from right to left that steps up is the 9, 11, 13, and 16-inch cutters. So that butternut tree that I showed you, if I can core that and get even 2 extra pieces out of each one, that will more than pay for that system. Then up here I got my mold release and some cleaning things, and that's pretty much all that is, actually, cleaning and mold release up in there, wax paper and things like that. This is my table saw. Again, it's it was part of the original shop tool buy. I've added a 4x8 extension table out there, which has a 1/4 inch high density polyethylene surface, and you'll see me do a lot of my resin, all my resin mixing actually, is done at the end of that table. It's really good. It'll dry on, scrape off really easily. Underneath the table, I've got some belts for some of the sanders that are here stored under there, some saw blades and some of the miter jigs and some of the other jigs like my wedgie sled and some of my gluing things. That's all kept underneath there. There's some antlers underneath there in a box and some pine cones, another project thing. Buffing grinders here. Not going to use them, unfortunately. I'm going to probably sell them because they aren't long enough shaft to use. So I'm going to get rid of those. And I've got my buffing system there. I got the old buffing system that you see me use in my videos, and I got a new BL1 in the bag, in the box there behind that Canon bag. I think the BL1s is going to be a little bit better, or BL, however you say that. So I'm anxious to see how that works out. This is my clamp stand where I keep all my pipe clamps, bar clamps, spring clamps, and my hose clamps, which I use when I'm doing segmented work. C-clamps and stuff are in the cabinets underneath. So in the cabinets underneath, there's just some miscellaneous. There's fasteners and there's some different abrasives and C-clamps and things like that. Different jigs of sorts. This is a 15-inch Canadian General bandsaw, and I've added a fence just recently. And if you notice out back, you can see shelves through the window. There's a 12-foot deep extension that I built on here a couple of years ago to keep storage of other things that don't belong in my shop. So this is another one of the pandemic purchases, along with the dust collector and the other 2 sanders, or 3 sanders that I've shown you already. This is a double drum sander, and I use this a ton when I'm doing cutting boards. I precision size pieces to laminate in this, and I also sand off my segmented rings when I'm doing segmented turnings, and it is fantastic for that. Really accurate and really quick. This is a 5/8 mortising machine. It's General International. It was used in one house build, and it's in really good shape. It's got a little bit of surface rust on it where it's been sitting in the damp, but it's never been used. The chisels are just like new. And they're the original chisels that would have came with it. So I don't do a ton of it, but when I do, I was using a drill press with an attachment on the bed of it, which I'm not a big fan of because I don't like, they don't set up easy. So this is much quicker. This is my 2 horsepower spindle shaper. I use this anytime I'm making raised panel doors or projects like that, or mantles for fireplaces and things, and made my kitchen cabinet doors for my own house out of it, which really paid for the machine itself. It doesn't get used a lot either, so as you see, it's just unplugged, not piped in, just kind of sitting on a base, and everything in here that's not in its final resting place is on a base, pretty much. This is an iCarve that I got also in the last couple of years, and I was hoping it would be more of a CNC type rig. I did some research on it, and I knew it would do pictures for sure, and I wasn't sure how much it could be modified. I do have a video where I did a plaque with this for a gentleman that's in the Coast Guard, which was kind of fun to do actually. You can carve out things on plaques and fill them with resin, or just carve pictures on pieces of wood if you choose. It's real simple to use. That's kind of a fun thing. And then in the corners, my drill press with a few homemade attachments sitting in the bottom. So those, you can see this little pedestal slides into the milled tracks in the bottom down there, and that gives me more height when I want to do those big bases like you saw in another video possibly. If you haven't seen it, you can go back and check it out. It's one of the projects that sell videos. And then that little square thing slides over top of the bed on the top. So I did another project that sells video that had birdhouses in it, and I did a full-size birdhouse out of cedar, which is made out of 6x6 by 12-inch cedar, and everyone asked how I drilled the hole in that, or how I got the hole. So I just used this drill press with a 4-inch Forstner bit, and that square box will hold, it's made to hold a 6x6 piece of cedar. So it can't turn. It locks over top of that table on the top, but it can't turn in your hands. And then the little stand beside on wheels has some attachments for the drill press and for the shaper and that. And then this is my flat stock rack. So I've got my exotics out front, well, exotics and some cherry, I guess. And my stock on that's pretty low right now, so I just did a run of cutting boards, so I went through a bunch of it. And the rest of it's just regular yellow birch and maple, a little bit of oak in there. And I've had that a long time, but that's going to be destined for a set of stair risers for my house, and for my basement steps actually soon. So over here, and I hope the sun's not washing this out too badly, this is my compressor here, which actually died today, which is sad. So now I gotta get a new compressor. I'm going to upgrade compressors though. That one doesn't have quite enough CFM to run a 5-inch sander well, which I use. I like to use pneumatic tools when I'm sanding cutting boards. And you see the stand here in front has my pressure pots, 2 of them, and my old vacuum chambers, which are just sitting here, but they're not really safe to use. Well, one's not, the one with the red's not safe to use, so I don't use that anymore. And there's a vacuum pump, which I use on my lathe when I use the vacuum chuck. But I keep them on this cart so that when I've got something in the pressure pots or the vacuum chambers, I can just move them out of the way. And they're not tying up shelf space or inhibiting me from doing other work. And there's a vacuum that I use here in the shop. It's on a 45-gallon drum or 55-gallon drum, and it's a double motor Nilfisk. It actually works really good. And then when you're done, you just have to dump out the 45-gallon drum. So keep a stick welder and a wire feed welder over there with the helmets and accessories. So we do a little bit of that. My dad was a welder, taught me. And then these storage boxes here, I keep earplugs and measuring tapes and Forstner bits and all kinds of different odds and ends in there, pencils and regular adhesives. Any kind of tapes that I have in the shop are in there, and torches and stuff are in the other one. Different odds and ends, just things that collect dust and it's hard to work around. And then when you see there's some chemicals on the top there and some propane torches, just regular WD-40 and rapid tap and things like that. And then my torch tanks are out here in the corner. So big thank you to my son and daughter-in-law for the help on getting this organized. I sure appreciated that. And if you're still with me, I appreciate that as well. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks again to everyone who subscribes to the channel and watches the videos. It really means a lot. Hopefully there'll be more shop improvement videos in 2022, and I'll bring you along for those as I do them. I'll try and interject them in between project videos without taking away from the project videos every Monday. So I hope you'll pop in next Monday to see the chisel swivel being made, and we'll see you next time.